Welcome back, everyone. So I did go to see Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, and this is a re-recording. I did record directly after leaving the theater, as I intend. However, it was pouring rain and very windy. There was an ambulance that came through and ruined one of the recordings. So even though trying it a couple of times, I still didn't really end up with anything that was usable. And I want to try and put something out, even if this isn't the highest budget of channels, something that is watchable. And so, talking just directly about this film, speaking of watchable, this film is incredibly watchable. I think that this is a film that I went into not having a lot of expectations. In fact, feeling pretty unsure if I even wanted to see it, even though I've grown up playing Dungeons and Dragons. I've been a D&D fan for almost 40 years, however long it's been, right? Um, Clearly Dungeons and Dragons doesn't have the best history in TV and cinema. Even though, every Saturday morning I loved is watching the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. It's one of my favorite things. There hasn't been a lot of other good representation out there. So this is a film that was made for fans, by fans, co-written by John Francis Daly from Freaks and Geeks and Bones, done a number of other things, and he puts together a script and a story that works really well within a pocket. I think where it starts to fall apart is when it tries to get a little bit too big. We can't, within the scope of, an hour and a half to 2.5 hours, have an entire campaign. We need to use the vernacular. We need a one shot. We need a film that's going to have a sort of a story that fits within a certain context, and it has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it's satisfying throughout. And I think generally this movie kind of does that. There are some problems with it. However, I think overall, where it shines is putting together memorable characters. The actors from Chris Pine to Michelle Rodriguez, which, by the way, Michelle Rodriguez, someone has to do a tally between her and Sean Bean, who dies more in the films, because it feels like she does. I know that's the ongoing joke, right? That she dies in every movie she does. Um, but she plays the barbarian. Chris Pine is the bard, and they all have their relegated roles. But the one thing that they do, which I love, is they are like, "Oh, you're the rogue, you're the barbarian, you're the druid." I guess they do call someone the druid, and they do call people a sorcerer. But it isn't like just ascribing a character class to them. Like, this is what they do, and they don't spend a lot of time on exposition and explaining how things work and what this spell is. Like, they just cast the spells, or they just do the action. And if you're a fan, if you know the material, like, it was cool, like, oh, cool, oh, Mordecai or Mordekainen, whichever it is, I don't remember. Um, or see Bigby's grasping hand, like, to see those spells on screen was really cool. To see some of the monsters without them, explaining everything. Sort of like, I guess, like a Star Wars film, right? Where some of these alien creatures and these monsters are just there in the background, and we just know that they exist and they live within the world. Or a comic book movie where you've got a story about Spider-Man, then there are all these Easter eggs that are kind of thrown into it, and I think that's really cool. But part of where this movie starts to fall apart, because at the beginning I was really excited. I said, oh, this is going to be cool. It's going to be just a D&D heist film, and Chris Pine has to get back his daughter, and he has to get him from the evil wizard, and or get her from the evil wizard, and that'll be cool. um, it gets a little bit bigger than that, and I don't know that it necessarily needed to, because in the end, even though they explain what the bad guys are, they're kind of formless. There is a name given to a couple of them, but I don't know that it really matters at all. Their actual motivation was just to be evil, I think, or to create an army of undead. Just kind of classic stuff. Nothing really groundbreaking. Uh, I don't know why people are having such a hard time writing villains. I, I would like to see a film that started with the idea that this is who the villain is going to be. This is their motivation. Put as much thought and effort into that as we are with the characters. Um, even the actress who plays the big bad in this film is, she's good. Um, but the actors who play the heroes, that's that obviously the stars of the film, but that's where this film shines. Is the way Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez, the way they embrace their characters, and the way this movie sort of embraces the ludicrous nature of everything. And um, they try and shove everything into it, which I guess if you're worried that you may never get another film, then yeah, let's try and do everything. But they try and do a little bit too much and get a little bit geeky here. Um, but to go from Icewind Dale to Neverwinter, and then to throw in also Baldur's Gate, and then wherever it was Michelle Rodriguez, I'm not familiar with the world is from, and they're kind of jumping back and forth. So there's this festival that they're going to pull off this heist at, and that's again, this is where things start to fall apart. There's a heist, but then they're also trying to rescue the daughter, and then they're also trying to stop the big bad evil guy, and there's all or woman, big bad evil woman. So there's all this stuff going on, and I don't know that it all resolves especially well. It gets a little bit too convoluted. Um, I think that the film itself looks great. I think the vistas as they're traveling, in that, where I was going with that was, as they're traveling from one location to the next, and they hit so many different places in this film, is, you've got a festival that's occurring over the next day or two, but they've got 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 days of travel as they're going from the the battlefields to the cities to the Underdark to all these places, and I don't know that that was all necessary. Um, there is a dragon in this film that just kind of, it's a fun moment, not more than a moment. It's a fun scene, um, but that could have by itself, the dragon could have been a big bad. Um, so it tries to shove too much in, and as far as the actual action of the film, although it's well choreographed, the problem is that in a Dungeons and Dragons group, the group works together. In this film, you only ever you really see one person fighting at a time, right? Michelle Rodriguez has a couple really good fight scenes. The paladin, who I don't know the actor's name, but my wife was really excited for him, has a really cool fight scene. But everyone else kind of just stands around. And the druid, she's got a whole sequence where she does some really cool things, but everybody's kind of doing their individual things there. And I guess they never really established what Chris Pine is good at, other than there's this whole bit about he makes plans and the plans are bad and whatever. It's funny. So this movie though isn't an action movie. This movie is a comedy, and it is funny. There are going to be lines from this. They're going to be recited at Dungeons and Dragons tables for years to come. I think that it does a really good job of hitting the sweet spot for fans. Is it going to bring in for people that don't like the genre or don't know the game or don't understand the material? Is it going to work for them? Like, say, how a Lord of the Rings kind of transcended some of those barriers? I don't think so. I think that it's going to stay within its niche, and that's absolutely fine. I think that that is exactly what it's designed to do, and it was successful in that. As I said, the film looks great. I do want to comment on the creatures. There are a lot of creatures that we see throughout the film. And I've seen a few movies lately, Shazam, 65, I'm looking at you, where the creatures they did not look good. In this movie, with the exception of the anthropomorphic races, the Aarakocra and the UNT and the Tabaxi, the Dragonborn, those don't look very good. However, the monsters themselves look great. Like they do a really good job with that. The spell effects look great on screen. Um, at the end, when the party finally comes together and fights together, it's dynamic. It's exciting. It needed to be more than 2 or 3 minutes of the film. Um, it kind of pulls things together, but really, I think it's setting up a world. It's setting up a band of adventurers that I, for one, would love to see in another film. Let's see what else we have there. There's plenty of material, there's plenty of stories out there to tell. And I'm really excited to see what comes next. Let's hope this movie does well enough that we can get another one. All right, if you have seen it, please let me know what you think. I appreciate everyone for watching, and hit that like and share and subscribe and all that stuff. Thank you. See you at the next movie.